Black CEO mocked and dismissed at her own hotel. What she did next shocked everyone. They didn't recognize her. But she stood there, like a mirror reflecting trampled pride and a lesson yet to be learned. Subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Charleston at night often carries the breath of old stories. The late rain had just stopped, leaving the pavement glistening like memories not yet at rest. Under the soft yellow glow spilling over the cobblestone, every lingering droplet seemed like a silent witness to footsteps about to mark something greater than a routine visit. A black sedan pulled up in front of the Fairine Hotel, nestled in the heart of the historic district, where rooms go for up to $980 a night. There was no sound of a door opening from a chauffeur, no bellhop, no entourage. The door opened quietly, and then she stepped out. Oralie Rowan, a black woman in her early 40s, tall, shoulders squared, face bare of makeup, gaze unwavering. She wore a gray hoodie zipped to the chest, black jeans, and a pair of time-worn Converse sneakers. No designer bags in hand, just a soft leather backpack resting casually over one shoulder. No one in the lobby knew that this woman was the co-founder and current CEO of Rowan Hospitality Group, a corporation that owns more than 27 luxury hotels across the country, with Fairine being the crown jewel in Charleston. But that evening, in their eyes, she was merely an out-of-place stranger, an anonymous guest, a skin tone adrift in a space designed to welcome expensive suits and French perfume. Oralie stood for a few seconds before the revolving glass door. She looked up at the building. Every tiled path, every pot of money tree plants had been chosen by her from the first draft 5 years ago. She was the one who had persevered through the bidding war to win the land from a bigger hotel chain. The one who had approved every velvet carpet sample, every recessed lighting switch. But tonight, she walked in like a guest without a name. The glass door spun gently. Her footsteps struck the marble floor. Dry and crisp sounds like the heartbeat of someone not yet welcomed. Silas, the front desk agent, didn't look up. Wearing a navy blue blazer stretched tightly across his shoulders, he remained focused on the screen, as if a single mouse click was more important than her presence. "Hello, I have a reservation." The name is Rowan. Silas frowned, his eyes still fixed on the screen. "Rowan." "Full name?" "Oralie Rowan." He tapped a few keys, then looked up with a neutral gaze, the kind of look only those who've been judged by appearance recognize instantly as one that already carries judgment. "Don't see your name. Do you have a confirmation code?" "Number Y booked through internal channels, under Rowan Hospitality Group. It's the executive-level suite." Silas paused for just a beat. His lips tightened before he slowly pressed a small button beneath the front desk, a discreet internal signal used for further verification, or more bluntly, a signal used when someone doesn't look like a typical guest. 30 seconds later, Peter, the security staff, appeared. In his late 50s, shoulders squared, posture straight like a retired serviceman. His hand rested near his hip, beside a leather case holding a radio, but also dangerously close to a taser. "Is there a problem here?" Peter asked, his voice low but clipped and heavy. Oralie stood upright. No step back, no overreaction, just a calm response, her eyes never leaving Silas. "There's no problem. I'm simply checking into a hotel I own." Peter gave her a quick once-over. Natural curls, no watch on her wrist, unshined shoes. In his eyes, nothing about her said she belonged here. Yet Oralie remained. She didn't need anyone to validate her, to prove she deserved to be there. She was simply waiting for them to realize the truth on their own. And that realization, like all profound changes, begins with silence. The employee office door opened softly but deliberately. From inside stepped Mary, the night shift manager. Neat in appearance, each of her steps measured and precise. Her hair was styled in a classic puffed look, a soft beige blonde held perfectly in place with hairspray. Her white blouse was crisply ironed, the top button fastened, and her black pencil skirt hugged just to the knee. In her hand, Mary held a black leather clipboard, as if it were a scepter of authority rather than a tool for notes. She approached the front desk, her gaze sweeping over Oralie with a courtesy tinged with caution. Not overt, but just enough to make clear. She had already decided who the problem was in this velvet-draped, spotlighted lobby. Oralie spoke politely, her voice neither raised nor cold. "I'm Oralie Rowan. I believe I have an executive suite reservation through the internal system, under my name." Mary didn't smile. She gave a curt nod, the kind that accepts a stranger's registration out of obligation. "We've had many cases of people impersonating the company's name, you know." Then she extended her hand. "May I see some identification, if you don't mind?" Oralie pulled from her coat pocket a soft leather wallet, producing a driver's license with the full name, Oralie D. Rowan, and an embossed business card on ivory paper bearing the gold-foiled logo of Rowan Hospitality Group, along with the title, Chief Executive Officer. Mary took them, looked for exactly 2 seconds, then handed them back without a word of acknowledgement. Instead, she spoke plainly, without a smile. "You look different than I expected." A small silence passed. Oralie stood firm. No frown, no rebuttal. She simply asked, light but sharp as a needle, "Different how?" Mary dodged the question by changing the subject. "Perhaps you could wait in the lounge while I verify with internal affairs." Her hand gestured gently toward a tucked-away corner near the bar, the designated waiting area for those not yet qualified to join the real conversation. But Oralie didn't move. She didn't exert pressure. Nor did she retreat. She simply stood, like someone far too familiar with being pushed aside and refusing to let it happen one more time. At that moment, the revolving door opened again. A white couple stepped in. The man in a camel cashmere coat, Audemar's Piguet watch on his wrist. The woman wrapped in a Hermes scarf, her hair golden like early spring sun. They didn't need to give their names, just a smile. Another staff member quickly stepped up, bowed slightly, took their bags, handed over room keys along with 2 welcome cocktails, as if they had just returned to their private residence. No one asked for confirmation numbers. No one requested they wait. Same lobby, same system, but 2 completely different service universes. Oralie glanced over, not with envy, not with surprise. Just a quiet acknowledgement, something that had happened too many times to still shock her. Down the left hallway, Callista, a senior housekeeper in a dark blue uniform with a crooked name tag, was pushing a cart of fresh towels when she paused for a moment, locking eyes with Oralie. She didn't raise her voice, didn't reach for her phone, didn't wave like a hero. She simply passed by, leaned in, and whispered like a spell meant to awaken. "Just stay right there, child. Let them show themselves." The words carried no anger, only the weariness of someone who had seen it all 1,000 times, but still held on to a sliver of hope that maybe tonight would be different. Silas, by now, after watching the fruitless exchange, squinted, his voice laced with both mockery and doubt. "You sure this hotel's yours?" Oralie didn't smile, nor did she rush to correct him. She simply replied, steady and clear as a definition, "I never said I own the hotel. I run it." Behind that calm exterior, a tidal wave was rising, and those in the lobby, though unaware, had just made a mistake they would never forget. The atmosphere in the Fairine Hotel lobby felt frozen in place. There were no footsteps, no apologies, only stares, either averted or suspicious, cast toward the woman standing upright, her gaze unwavering under the soft gold ceiling lights. Oralie Rowan, after a deep breath, stepped slowly to the side. She pulled her phone from the pocket of her hoodie, the case worn at the edges, the back bearing a small sticker of an escalator, her personal symbol, representing steady upward progress, one level at a time. No panic, no need to call twice. She dialed, raised the phone to her ear. "This is Rowan. Activate the Charleston file immediately." Her voice was calm, firm, no yelling, no performance, only the expectation of being heard. 1 second later, the voice on the other end replied, "Understood." Proceeding now. No one in the hotel, not the manager, not the security guard, not the staff on duty, had any idea that the woman in the gray hoodie and worn white sneakers had just authorized the highest-level internal audit protocol, the kind of operation only the CEO had the authority to initiate. She ended the call and set the phone on the reception desk, not as a challenge, but as a demonstration that true power doesn't need to be hidden behind a suit and tie. Silas glanced at the phone, then looked at Mary. Neither spoke, but something between them shifted, as if they had accidentally triggered a mechanism they didn't fully understand. The chill in the lobby seemed to lift. Though the air conditioning still hummed, the atmosphere suddenly turned thick, as though something invisible had cracked and was about to spill over. Oralie didn't look at anyone in the lobby. Her eyes went to the painting hanging to the right of the front desk, a large art print of Charleston's Ravenel Bridge, the very image that had inspired her to choose this city as the site for laying the first brick of her hotel chain. A rush of memories surged forth, but not the sparkling ones of a CEO. These were the memories of sweat and bleach from when she was 16. Back then, she and her mother worked the night shift at a public hospital in West Atlanta. Her mother, a trauma nurse, always had red eyes, her feet swollen in worn-out white shoes. Oralie, wearing an apron, mop in hand, scrubbed dried blood from the hallway floors. Whenever exhaustion hit them, they would glance at each other, then look up at the glass jar on top of the refrigerator, on which her mother had scrawled the words, "Own something." Just 2 words, but an entire philosophy, not just to have a job, but to have control. At 26, she arrived in Miami, walking 7 blocks in borrowed heels from her cousin to apply for a front desk manager position at a renowned boutique hotel. The white manager, tanned skin, voice smooth like a luxury car ad, had said, "You speak very well, but we're looking for someone who better fits the brand image." She nodded, walked out without letting him see her trembling hands. Oralie never applied to that hotel again. Instead, she spent 9 years building her own hotel chain, where image didn't dictate dignity. And now, inside the very Fairine Hotel lobby, where she had invested capital, approved every construction detail, and signed the grand opening license in 2021, she was being treated like a security risk by an employee whose salary she indirectly paid. But she didn't flinch, every wound ever etched into her heart, from hospital corridors, from that Miami hotel, from those scrutinizing stares on the street, had turned into armor, forged across her shoulders. She didn't need to shout in anyone's face that she was the CEO. She only needed to let them discover for themselves that they had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. And from that phone call, the storm had begun to form. The glass revolving door turned once more, this time without a sound. No one in the Fairine Hotel lobby noticed at that moment. They were too busy avoiding Oralie's gaze or pretending to be engrossed in their computer screens, as if hiding behind data could erase what had just unfolded. But then, the atmosphere shifted, as if the pressure in the room suddenly dropped in an inexplicable way. From the front entrance, 2 men stepped in. No one smiled, no one called out, no one welcomed them. But within seconds, the entire lobby stood still. Dermot Langley, Regional Operations Director, stood nearly 6'3", shoulders broad, like a man who had once served in the military. His outfit was simple: a beige trench coat, leather gloves, and an aura that discouraged small talk. Beside him was Enoch Barrett, head of internal oversight. Lean build, navy-tailored suit, a Bluetooth earpiece in his left ear, and a slim folder in his right hand. The Charleston file, now in motion. No one at the fairing that night knew who these men were. But within 3 minutes of their arrival, no one dared take a step or look away. Dermot didn't waste time. He walked straight to the reception desk, glancing at Silas, then locking eyes with Peter, the guard still positioned near Oralie like a makeshift barrier. Enoch placed the file on the desk, opening it like a lawyer presenting evidence. "We're not here to exchange pleasantries," Dermot began. "We're here to confirm one thing: whether tonight's staff truly uphold the core values of the Rowan Group or not." Peter stepped back, his hand instinctively brushing his belt. Silas turned pale, his hand clenched beneath the counter, tapping lightly against the wood as if trying to summon his composure. Mary had just stepped out of the back office, clipboard still in hand, her eyes scanning rapidly like she was searching for an exit from a nightmare. But there was no back door for arrogance. Enoch continued, his voice low and sharp as a razor. "Tonight's shift was informed 2 weeks ago of a possible anonymous audit. All staff signed the clause. Every guest must be welcomed as if they are the highest-level inspector in the system." He turned to Oralie, not for confirmation, but simply to say, "She came. Not as the CEO, but as a guest, to see how you treat someone without a name tag, without a Louis Vuitton purse, without a designer suit." Silence. Oralie stepped forward. She wasn't angry. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stood before the three who had judged her and said, "You didn't fail because you didn't recognize me. You failed because you forgot how to see people." At that moment, Callista stepped out from the side hallway, a glass of water in hand. No sound, no expression. She placed the glass on the counter, near Oralie's hand. She whispered, but everyone heard her. "I've seen this happen more times than I can count. But this time, someone chose to stay." Callista's eyes didn't leave Mary. Within them was a reservoir of memories, of guests turned away because their skin was too dark to be on brand, because their coats didn't match the red carpet entrance, because their voices didn't sound like locals. Pamela, the intern standing near the corner of the lobby, suddenly pulled out her phone. Her hands trembled, but her gaze did not falter. "I recorded part of what happened earlier," she said, her voice barely louder than a breeze through a cracked door. "Not to share, just to have proof." Both Silas and Mary turned toward her at once. In their eyes was not just shock, but fear. Oralie looked at the young woman. She nodded, gently. "Truth doesn't need permission to exist," she said. "And justice, sometimes, only needs one person willing to hold on to what's right." Enoch made notes. Dermot didn't smile, nor did he nod. He simply turned to the next page of the file. In a space originally designed to convey luxury and stability, the atmosphere now hung heavy like a deposition room without lawyers. The clipboard in Mary's hand had long gone still. Silas was no longer typing. Peter no longer stood guard. All eyes were fixed on one spot, the reception desk, where the masks of hospitality had just fallen, revealing the true face of an outdated culture. Oralie didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to name names. She simply looked ahead, her voice low but clear, like the strike of a gavel in a courtroom. This wasn't a night of mistakes. This was reflex, a dangerous habit formed and repeated every single day. You didn't act this way out of confusion. You acted this way because you thought you were allowed to. No one responded, no one denied it, and no one had anywhere left to hide. Dermot, as if anticipating every defense, opened a black document folder. He pulled out a stack of papers printed on cream-colored stock, marked in the upper right corner with the golden seal of the Rowan Group. He placed them on the desk, his tone sharp and firm. This is the internal notice. Each quarter, the CEO may carry out an anonymous inspection at any branch, at any time, in any form. He turned to Mary. You signed this on the 3rd of last month. Mary took half a step back, her voice weak. I didn't know. She was coming. Oralie turned to her, retracting none of her words, yet not harsh. That's the point. It's when you didn't know who I was, that your real selves came through. Just then, Pamela, the young intern still standing close to the marble column, suddenly stepped forward. Her hand trembled slightly, but her gaze no longer wavered. I recorded a video from the beginning, just 2.5 minutes, but it's enough to show how they treated her. She pulled out her phone and played the clip. In the frame, the lobby lighting lit up every expression clearly. Mary raising her chin, squinting when Oralie presented her business card. Silas smirking, full of doubt, when she mentioned being the CEO. Peter shifting his hand near his weapon when Oralie merely said, I'm checking in. 3 minutes. No profanity. No physical abuse. But none was needed. Every gesture, every glance, was enough to expose a system built on assumptions instead of actual people. Enoch, arms crossed, spoke plainly, without flourish. We're not here to fire individuals. We're here to uproot rot, habits so deeply ingrained, people mistake them for the standard. Some staff lowered their heads, others glanced at one another, anxiety in their eyes. Only Callista, the one who once collected dirty towels from suites and had silently witnessed countless instances of quiet mistreatment, held her head high. Oralie turned toward the surveillance monitor where the video had just ended. She pointed to the image of herself, surrounded like an outsider. I don't need power to be treated with respect. I don't need anyone to remember my title. I need you to understand. No person should have to prove they deserve basic decency. She turned to Pamela, her gaze softening. Starting today, you'll work directly with my office as assistant for customer experience auditing. No need to wait for your internship to end. Pamela stood still, her lips parted as if to ask something, but then she simply nodded. At that moment, no one saw her as just an inexperienced intern anymore. Dermot gave Oralie a small nod. Enoch marked a page in the file. No one said a word more. The crack in Farine's polished surface had been revealed, and the task now was to sweep away every layer of dust clinging to its reputation. Callista was not someone prone to rebellion. In her 12 years working at the Farine Hotel, she lived like a shadow, waking at 4 a.m., leaving the hotel near midnight, and never once daring to ask for a raise. People called her careful, kind, quiet. But the truth was, Callista had learned to survive by staying silent, not because she didn't see, but because she wasn't allowed to see. 4 years ago, Callista had prepared a diamond-class suite, a room with a bathtub in the center, and a ceiling of imported Swedish pine. It had been booked by a black couple from Charlotte. They had mentioned it was their 10th wedding anniversary. Callista changed the sheets 3 times, checked the chill on the wine bucket, and placed 2 handwritten cards beneath the bedside lamps. But when the couple arrived, the front desk needed less than 30 seconds to say, "Sorry, it looks like there was a double booking in the system. Unfortunately, there's no suitable room available at this time." Callista had been standing exactly 10 steps away. She had wanted to speak up, but then her daughter texted to remind her about the health insurance payment, and she bowed her head again. The wife in that couple looked around once. Her eyes were still, like a midnight lake. No tears, no protest. She simply held her husband's hand tightly. and walked away. That image had haunted Callista through 4 seasons of rain and sun, embedded in her sleep like an alarm clock she didn't dare silence. But this time, everything was different. Oralie Rowan didn't walk away. She stood her ground, quiet, steady, and calm, as though she had risen from 1,000 past dismissals. And it was that very moment that made Callista realize she no longer had the right to remain silent. She stepped toward Pamela, the young intern still holding her phone, torn between the duty to report and the instinct to survive. Her voice wasn't loud, but each word sliced through the suffocating air. "If you don't speak up, who will?" Pamela looked at her, youthful eyes shimmering with tears, but something within her had begun to shift. A new awareness. Silas, from behind the front desk, saw this scene. He stepped closer, his voice soft, like someone shedding an old layer of defense. "Miss Callista, do you think I meant to discriminate?" Callista turned, looking him straight in the eye. No longer just a cleaner. She was now the only one brave enough to point at what the entire system had hidden beneath velvet carpets. "I think you never stopped to ask, who is that person? You saw a black woman in sneakers, a hoodie. You saw out of place. You saw not the standard. And you made a decision. You didn't see her name engraved on the stone wall at the entrance, alongside the year this hotel was founded." Silas lowered his head, not out of fear, but because for the first time he couldn't deny it. But Callista didn't soften her tone. She didn't soothe. She didn't let him off easy. "If you want to learn, then you need to clean up the consequences." Her voice was firm as stone. The hand that once held a mop handle now gripped it like the hilt of a sword. For the first time, Callista wasn't afraid of the looks around her. No one dared interrupt. Mary turned her face away, lips pressed tight. Peter, the tall security guard, sat slumped in a chair as though his foundation had cracked. Pamela looked up, her hands no longer trembled. In that moment, though still in uniform, Callista was no longer just the cleaning staff. She was a witness, a living memory, the boundary between the old and the new. And when she returned to her cart, placing the hand towels back in their place, a faint smile appeared on her lips, not for the guests, but for herself. Because for the first time in 12 years, Callista felt she was here, not to be background, but to stand witness to change. The air in the Fairine Hotel lobby was thick, like the moments before a summer storm. The faint scent of cedarwood cologne, mixed with the dust from the premium wool carpet, couldn't mask the suffocating tension tightening around everyone. The internal speaker system was silent. The nightly jazz music had stopped playing at some point. Within a space once designed to evoke sophistication and power, only truth remained, and its consequences. Dermot, his graying hair slicked back and his voice like a hammer striking mahogany, stood upright at the reception desk. He flipped a sheet of paper and stared at Mary without blinking. "Mary Jennings, night shift manager. You are hereby officially suspended, effective immediately. Not for failing to recognize the CEO, but for turning a person's existence into something suspicious." The words fell like a blade. Mary froze. The familiar clipboard in her hand dropped to the marble floor with a sharp, dry sound. She stammered. "It was a misunderstanding. I was just following protocol. It might have been." Oralie cut in, her voice not raised, but strong enough to slice through every excuse. "You called security when I was waiting to check in. You said I didn't match expectations. The issue isn't mistaken identity. The issue is, to you, someone like me could never be anyone." No one interrupted. Not even Silas, who was usually quick-tongued, said a word. Enoch stepped forward from behind, holding a printed note stamped with the senior HR department seal. He looked at Silas, not angrily, but with finality. "Silas, you'll undergo 30 days of mandatory supervision, full retraining on unconscious bias, intake skills, and inclusive communication. If you're still here afterward, it'll be because you've truly changed, not because you were forgiven." Silas nodded. No defense, no tears. Just his hands clenched behind his back, and for the first time in his life, he felt he had no right to argue. Peter, stepping slightly back, turned his head away from Oralie's gaze. His voice came out like a whisper. I don't think I did anything wrong." Dermot didn't hesitate for even a second. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't think. You didn't ask. You just reacted, like someone trained to believe that power comes from posture and skin color." A heavy silence blanketed the room. Staff farther away hid behind the bar. A few had taken out their phones, but didn't dare press record. Pamela, the intern who had only been on the job for less than 3 weeks, stepped forward again. Her hands trembled, but her eyes gleamed with a strange kind of courage. I recorded another clip, from a different angle. There's audio, facial expressions, how they spoke about black guests. I didn't record it to post. I recorded it because I can't look away like I used to." Oralie said nothing, but Enoch, with the calm authority of someone who'd seen it all, nodded. "Send that video to the central office. And as of today, officially, you are appointed Assistant Customer Experience Supervisor for the entire Rowan Group." The entire lobby seemed to freeze. A young woman, with no seniority, no family ties to management, was kept on. Not because of the footage, but because she dared to stand on the side of what was right, before anyone else did. Callista gave the faintest smile, like a thread of silk. That was the moment she knew. The torch had been passed. From afar, 2 newly hired employees entered through the back door, still unaware of what had unfolded, paused at the quiet scene, then turned their gaze toward Oralie as if looking at a page from a history book, where the underestimated rewrote the rules. The next morning, at 8:15 a.m., an emergency internal meeting was convened in the 3rd-floor conference room of the Fairine Hotel. There was no email announcement, no formal invitation, just a single line of text on the LED screen outside the door. "Show up to prove you still want to work here." Under the cold white fluorescent lights, nearly 30 people, from front desk staff, security, office assistants to floor managers, sat in an anonymous circle. No priority seats, no head table. Oralie Rowan, not wearing a suit, not wearing a name tag, stood in the center of the room with the calm posture of someone who had seen it all, and chose not to look away. On the large projector screen behind her, the video footage from both the security cameras and Pamela's phone began to play. No sound, just images. First frame. Oralie stands in the lobby. No one greets her. Second frame. Mary blocks her. Silas glances, then turns away. Third frame. Peter approaches, his hand brushing the waistband where his security tool rests. No one in the room moved. Even the creak of chairs had disappeared. Oralie began in a low, slow voice, each word precise like a hammer tapping into the listener's mind. "I don't need anyone here to remember my name. I need everyone to remember the feeling from last night, when no one knew they were being watched, and each of you acted from your true instincts." She pointed to each frame, not to accuse, not to name names, but everyone saw themselves in it. After a moment, Callista's voice rose from the doorway, soft but firm, like wetted stone. She stood still, like a mirror, and all of you reflected nothing but what's been running in your veins for far too long. Oralie didn't turn around, simply continued. "Culture isn't in the handbook, it's in the reflex. Mary's reflex when she saw I wasn't in a suit. Silas's reflex when my name didn't come with a title. Peter's reflex, when he saw my skin color, and assumed that meant threat. No one laughed. No one looked at their phones. There were no obligatory coughs like in most morning meetings. Pamela, sitting in the last row, still held the file she hadn't had the chance to submit the day before. But her grip tightened, no longer trembling. Her eyes now held confidence and conviction. Oralie walked a slow circle around the room, her tone steady. We can teach each other how to mix cocktails, how to fold napkins, how to smile at customers. But all of that is meaningless if we don't learn how to see a human being as a human being. Dermot, the director of human resources, stood and held a new plan in his hand. Starting next week, all employees at every Rowan hospitality property, from New Orleans to Boston, will undergo retraining on bias, reflex, and human evaluation. Not because we distrust everyone, but because a system is only as strong as its smallest link. He paused briefly, then delivered the closing line like a deeply engraved command. If you need a name tag to respect someone, you don't belong in hospitality. The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't the silence of fear or anger. It was the silence of people realizing a new standard, one that required no suits, no authority, only humanity. As she left the meeting room, Pamela turned to look at Callista. The older woman smiled, and for the first time, no one saw Pamela as just an intern anymore. Oralie Rowan slowly descended back into the Farine Hotel lobby, where not a single trace remained of the jazz melodies or clinking glasses that had filled the air the night before. The red carpet in front of the reception desk was still soft, but her footsteps today felt heavier, burdened by the eyes of people who had once brushed past her like she was invisible. No one greeted her by title. No one exclaimed, "That's the CEO." But every gaze had changed. No more feigned confusion, no more proud frowns, only acknowledgement. Real, director, and too late. Mary sat on a chair near the minibar, her once crisp white shirt now wrinkled like her face. The clipboard she had once wielded like a staff of authority lay silently on the counter, forgotten. Her eyes stayed lowered, as if trying to unfasten the invisible necklace around her neck, labeled bias. Oralie was not sarcastic, not bitter. She stood across from Mary in the very place where so many voices had once been swallowed by the culture of passive hospitality. Her voice was low, brief, not threatening, but not soothing either. Last night, I was reminded of an old lesson, that some people still judge others within 3 seconds. And worse, they believe those 3 seconds are enough to decide who deserves respect. A short silence followed. Then Silas, the young receptionist, stepped forward 1 step at a time. His hair was no longer slicked back. The overconfident expression had vanished. All that remained was the proper trembling of someone who finally realized the mistake was real, not just a stumble to be excused. I want to start over, from the beginning, if you'll allow it. Oralie looked him straight in the eyes. No nod, no shake. A second chance isn't a reward, it's a responsibility. Silas bowed his head, for real this time. No performance, no defense. Peter, the security guard, was still leaning by the marble column near the entrance. His eyes were red, but no longer defiant. He stepped forward, not looking at anyone, only at the shoes that had stood in the wrong place the night before. I was wrong, not because I did something terrible, but because I thought I didn't need to think. But I'll learn. Enoch, the senior director, stood behind them, hands in his pockets, saying nothing. But his eyes followed each person, each sentence, missing no detail, as if he were redrawing the hotel's entire personnel map in his mind. At that moment, Oralie pulled a folded white sheet of paper from her coat pocket. She walked to the notice board next to the elevator, where schedules and maintenance warnings were usually posted. No one knew what she wrote. No one saw the words clearly. But when she pinned the paper to the upper left corner of the board, precisely where the ceiling light hit, a few staff began to approach. Silas looked first, then Pamela, then Callista, then everyone. 12 words, typed in even capital letters, no logo, no exclamation point. Don't just teach them to serve, teach them how to see people. No one needed to read it aloud. No one had to point at it. But somehow, each word echoed on its own across the cold stone walls that once felt so impenetrable. Oralie left without needing a farewell. No one needed to call her Madam Rowan. She left her name, not on a business card, but in the behavior of every person there. A new employee, a young front desk clerk no one remembered the name of, leaned toward Silas and asked quietly, "Who is she?" Silas didn't answer immediately, but after a moment, he looked toward the white paper and said, "The kind of person you should never look down on, no matter what she's wearing, where she's standing, or what her name is." Room 17. O1 of the Fairrhine Hotel still carried the scent of oak wood and peppermint candle wax, but the atmosphere inside had shifted completely from when Oralie once stood outside the door, denied, simply because of a gray hoodie and worn-out sneakers. Now, she sat on the leather chair by the window, with the night stretching out beyond, like a map of the cities she had passed through, places where people had laughed, doubted, and fought battles without weapons, but with scars just the same. On the table sat a sleek laptop, its soft blue light casting over her face, calm yet holding something deep, something quiet and sharp. Oralie didn't start a meeting, didn't review revenue reports, didn't check Enoch or Dermot's notes. She opened a blank document. No title, no formatting. And she began typing. "Mom, tonight I didn't shout. I didn't explain. I didn't try to prove I was worthy. I just stood there and let them reveal themselves." Her fingers paused. A minute, maybe longer. She looked out the window, where traffic lights sparkled like the steady heartbeat of a city still learning how to reevaluate itself. She typed again. "You used to tell me, silence is sharp as a blade. Tonight, it didn't just cut them, it cut into my heart too. But that's okay. Sometimes being strong isn't about raising your voice. It's about standing still until truth rises. Slow, jagged, but undeniable." A soft ding from the elevator echoed down the hallway. No one knocked. She remained alone, but no longer felt lonely. Below, in the lobby, Callista was still on night duty. Pamela was likely rereading her first welcome email from HR, and Silas, perhaps, was writing his commitment to relearn how to respect a human being without needing a uniform or a title. Oralie typed the final line. "I won't give up, but before I return to being untouchable, I need to write this, so that tomorrow, girls in sneakers and ambition won't have to bow to the wrong kind of gaze." She stared at the document for a few seconds, then clicked, close. No saving. No need. Because that letter didn't need to be sent anywhere. It had already been rewritten, more clearly, in every action, every decision, every newly awakened look from those who had once stayed silent. And as she stood up and untied her ponytail, letting her natural hair fall freely over her shoulders, Oralie knew she had just completed something important, not just for herself, but for those who had yet to be named. Downstairs, Callista wiped the last table near the glass windows. She didn't look up, but something in the air made her pause. She raised her head. The light reflected her face in the glass, not tired anymore, but smiling. A real smile. Not because Oralie was CEO, not because Pamela got to stay, not because Mary was suspended or Peter was writing a report, but because on a quiet night, someone had stood still long enough for the entire system to reflect on itself. And from now on, every tile beneath her feet would carry new meaning. No longer the lobby floor for those in suits to be served by appearances, but proof of what Oralie had written through the way she lived. Respect is the standard, not the reward. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like the video and subscribe so you won't miss the next one.